Hi everyone, thank you so much for your interest in our brand new Fix My Session solution. We hope it will make support calls related to locked profiles and stuck sessions a thing of the past. Once you've downloaded the Fix My Session installer, you'll want to install it on a member server in your RDS environment, AVD environment, or other EUC environment. For instance, this can be a management server or one of your file servers if you host your profiles on a Windows server as opposed to Azure files. Just make sure it's in the same virtual network as your session hosts. We'll refer to this as the Fix My Session primary server from here on out. When prompted, acknowledge the warning about having a backup program in place for your profile disks, and also install the license file you were emailed. Once you have it installed, you'll first need to create a service account in your domain that Fix My Session will use for delegation. This account should be a domain user with local admin rights on the primary system where you initially install Fix My Session, any session host that will be managed by Fix My Session and host its agents, and also on any Windows file servers in your domain if you host your profile disks there as opposed to in Azure file shares. Next, you'll need to specify a mail server that Fix My Session will use to relay email notifications to users about the status of their profiles. Since Microsoft 365 and Outlook Online continue to prove increasingly difficult to deal with in terms of SMTP relay and authentication, we recommend using a commercial transactional email relay service like SMTP2Go or SendGrid, both of which have free tiers. Enter in your SMTP details and make sure to test that email relay works okay. You will note throughout the Fix My Session configuration tool that you can customize the on-screen messages and email message details that Fix My Session presents to users. That's deliberate because we know organizations will want to custom tailor the messages to their company's preferred language and/or provide additional details or instructions to their users. In the Behavioral Settings tab, you can choose to exclude certain users and groups from receiving locked profile notifications, such as your admin team members. Also, the default settings here related to delays and deletion of temporary profiles should be sufficient for most organizations, but can be changed if desired. In EUC environments like RDS and AVD, there can be situations whereby sessions become unresponsive to the point where users can only disconnect from them, and these issues are often unrelated to profile problems. When those users attempt to reconnect, they will be brokered right back to the unresponsive session. The only way to fix the issue is to log out the unresponsive session completely, which to date had to be completed by an IT administrator or help desk technician, using a tool like our Remote Desktop Commander solution. Fix My Session ships with the Session Savior app, which can be published as a remote app and which allows users to log out and terminate their own problematic sessions without getting the IT team involved. To use the Session Savior app, you must first let Fix My Session know how to query the session hosts that may have a user-stuck session running on them. This is done in the Self-Directed Session Fixer tab, and you have three options here. You can search for hung sessions by consulting RDS connection brokers, by consulting the AVD broker for AVD host pools located in an Azure resource group, or by consulting a static list of computers placed in an Active Directory security group. The first option is used for RDS environments. Please note that if you have a high availability environment, you should only list one of the brokers in the high availability pair in this area. If you have multiple independent RDS deployments, each with their own set of brokers, you can list one broker from each deployment, separated by commas. If you have AVD deployments, enter the AVD resource group name that houses the session hosts and host pools. Lastly, if you are running a different EUC platform, like Citrix or Parallels RAS, create a global security group in Active Directory, place all of the computer accounts that act as session hosts in that environment into this new global group, and then specify it here. Fix My Session will then consult the computers in that group when searching for a user's hung session. If you are deploying Fix My Session into an AVD environment, you will need to both create an app registration with a service principal name in AVD that Fix My Session can use to enumerate your AVD host pools and hosts, as well as manage open profile disks stored on AVD file shares, if needed. The Fix My Session help file has a step-by-step guide on creating an app registration with SPN you can use to perform this step. Make sure that your SPN holds the desktop virtualization contributor role in the resource group housing your AVD deployment, as well as the storage account contributor and storage file data SMB share contributor roles if you are using Azure Files to host your profile disks. Once this critical step is taken care of, enter in all required information in the AVD Settings tab, such as the GUID of your subscription ID, GUID of your tenant ID, GUID of your app registration, app secret of your SPN, and resource group. If you are hosting your profile disks in Azure Files, also enter in the storage account and AVD file share associated with the user profiles. To verify that your credentials are correct, use the Test Credentials button. If you are using Azure File Shares, you should see a current open list of profile disks and folders after pressing the Test Credentials button. If you are not using Azure File Shares, you should see a list of AVD session hosts in your deployment. In this test lab, I'm not using AVD, so I'll uncheck this option. At this point in the setup, we need to stop to save our changes. If all of your entries are validated successfully, Fix My Session will prompt you to enter the password associated with the Fix My Session service account. If the password is invalid, it will let you know and ask you to type it in again. The last step we need to perform here is to tell Fix My Session about the session hosts which will run the Fix My Session agent services, and then deploy the agent components to each host. You can select monitored hosts by listing them from your Active Directory environment, RDS connection broker, or AVD resource group. Don't forget to check the Include Workstation accounts for AVD if you are adding hosts from the Active Directory server inside the AVD environment. Once your hosts have been added, run the Agent Manager to push the agent components out to each host. Fix My Session accomplishes this process over WinRM, which should be enabled by default on all Windows servers, as well as AVD session hosts. If it is not, please enable WinRM on your host before attempting to deploy these agents. After the agents are deployed, you can test how Fix My Session works on your session hosts. I have deliberately used the admin switch with MSTSC to log into one of my RDS hosts running FSLogix in a collection, and now I'm using the admin switch with MSTSC to log into a different host to deliberately encounter a locked profile. Fix My Session immediately detects the locked profile, warns me about it, and asks me if I would like to fix it. I enter in my email address and click Yes. Fix My Session immediately logs me out of my current session, locates the other session where I'm logged in, and also logs out that session. It waits and then verifies that my existing profile disk is no longer locked on the file server, which it would also unlock if required. Finally, it sends me an email shortly thereafter letting me know that everything is fixed and prompts me to log back in. The final thing I'm going to do now is deploy the Session Savior app to a separate RDS collection or separate AVD host pool, and then publish it as a remote app so that any user with a stuck session that is not profile related can free and log out that stuck session without needing to get the IT team involved. The Fix My Session help file has multiple walkthroughs that show you both how to create a new RDS collection or AVD host pool, and also how to publish our tool as a remote app. The most critical thing you should note here is that it is best to publish Session Savior in its own RDS collection, AVD host pool, or equivalent. By isolating it on a different host in a different collection or host pool, you guarantee its ability to run even if there were problems with some of the hosts in the primary line of business collection or host pool. Once you have it published correctly, end users should see it in the RD Web portal, AVD client, or equivalent, and they can select it whenever they're having an issue with a stuck session. You can test it yourself. Log into your primary line of business desktop or remote app, then launch the Session Savior remote app. It will search for other sessions you have open and give you the opportunity to log them out. Doing so will end the selected session.